This video will cover problems 4-25 to 4-30. First problem is write expressions to represent the quantities described below. Geraldine is 4 years younger than Tom. If Tom is 2 years old, how old is Geraldine? Also, if Stephen is twice as old as Geraldine, how old is she? So it gives us the fact that T is equal to Tom's age. So in terms of Tom, it says Geraldine is 4 years younger than Tom. So if Tom is T, then we know that Geraldine will be 4 years younger, so Tom's age minus 4. So T minus 4 would be Geraldine's age. Also, Stephen is twice as old as Geraldine, so if Geraldine is T minus 4, then Stephen would be twice that age, or 2 times the quantity T minus 4. Alright, on B, 150 people went to see Ode to Algebra, performed in the school auditorium. If the number of children that attended the performance was C, how many adults attended? So you notice that 150 people attended, and the number of children that attended, they're going to say is C. So C equals the number of children that attended. Okay. So in terms of the adults, you have 150 people attend. So if you take 150 minus C, that would represent the number of adults that would attend. So 150 minus C. And then the third one, the cost of a new CD is $14.95, and the cost of a video game is $39.99. How much would C CDs cost and B video games cost? So we don't know how many we're buying. That's the variables that we're using. So if a CD costs $14.95, then for every CD that we buy, we need to multiply that cost times C, and then add on the video game, which is $39.99 times the number of games that you will buy. Number 26, Nina has some nickels and 9 pennies in her pocket. Her friend Maurice has twice as many nickels as Nina. Together, these coins are worth 84 cents. How many nickels does Nina have? Show all work and label your answer. So what we don't know is we don't know how many nickels Nina has. So we're going to say that we want to let N equal the number of nickels that Nina has. We also know she has 9 pennies in her pocket, but Maurice has twice as many nickels. So if Maurice has twice as many, so 2N would equal the number of nickels that Maurice has. Okay, and we know the coins are worth 84 cents. So we need to take the number of nickels plus the 9 pennies that Nina has plus the number of nickels that Maurice has, and we have to figure out it's the cost. Okay, so it's the value. So let's go back here. So with the N, that's just the number of nickels, but we know a nickel is 5 cents. So since we're doing cents, we're going to do 5 times the number of nickels plus 9 pennies plus 5 times the number of nickels is equal to 84 cents. So up here I was actually just looking at the numbers, but we're looking at the value. So we need 5 times the number of nickels plus 9 pennies plus 5 times the number of nickels for Maurice was equal to 84 cents. So 5N plus 9 plus 10N is equal to 84. Combine your like terms. Subtract the 9. So that would be 75, and then divide by 15. And so N is equal to 5. So let's make sure we answer the question. How many nickels does Nina have? So Nina has 5 nickels. And I think that's all it asked for. So there's our final answer. 27, create a table and graph the rule y equals 10 minus x squared plus 3x. Label its x and y intercepts. So to create a table, we have x and y, so an input and an output. Our equation is x squared, so it is a quadratic. So if you want to use Desmos, that would definitely be beneficial. I'm just going to go ahead and set up my table and plug in values, and then you can either do it by hand or plug it into your calculator. I'm not going to show all that work, but I'll just plug in my inputs and then give you the outputs. So I'm going to use -3 to 3 and see what that gets me. If I plug in -3, I get an output of -2 or -8. And what I'm doing is I'm just saying y is equal to 10 minus -3 squared plus 3 times -3. So I'm plugging in the x values for the x's and then simplifying. So on -2 you get 0. -1 you get 6. 0 would be 10. If I plug in 1, I get 12. 2, I get 12. So there's that repeat. And then 3, I'm back to 10. Let me get a couple more values in here. 4, I will be at 6. And then 5, I'll be at 0, since we're going to be looking for the intercepts. So then we can plot those points and graph the parabola. So at -3, we're at -8. -2 is at 0. -1 is at 6. 0 is at 10. It does go up to 12. My graph doesn't quite go up that high, going by ones. So it'll be about right here. And then at 2, it's also at 12. 3 is back at 10. 4 is at 6, and then 5 is at 0. And since a parabola is symmetric, I could go 6, and that would be at -8. And then we'll graph. And right here, it doesn't go straight across. It still has that U shape, so it does go above, a little bit above the 12. We're just not going to find it out exactly. And so there's the table and the graph for the quadratic equation. On 28, we have some graphs here. We want to examine them and decide if it is a function and then do the domain and range. So on part A, it is not a function because there are plenty of x values that have more than one y value. There's an example. At x equals 0, there's actually 3 different y values. So it is not a function. And even if it's not a function, it does have a domain and range. So domain, if you look, the smallest value of your x is at -3, the largest is at 3, and it covers all those values. So we could write it out in words, all values between -3 and 3, including -3 and 3, or here's how you would write it mathematically using inequalities. So you want to say -3 would be the smallest, 3 would be your largest, x is your variable, so we want values that are less than or equal to 3, and then we want values that are greater than or equal to -3. And when you read this, since x is in the middle, you're reading it this way, so that's x is greater than or equal to -3, and then this way it's less than or equal to 3. So we'll work on that, but that's the way you can do it in symbols. Range is going to be the same thing. It is -3, your y value, to +3. So we can write it the same way, but you're going to put y instead of x. B is a function. There I don't see any x values that give you more than one y value, so it is a function. The domain for this one is your x value looks to start at -2 and go all the way to 3. So once again, we can write that in this form, -2. X is greater than or equal to -2, but less than or equal to 3. Or you can write it in words. And then the range goes down to right here at -2 and then up to 2. So same thing, that the x value is greater than or equal to, the y value is greater than or equal to -2 and less than or equal to 2. On question 29, what number is not part of the domain of the function? This goes back, I believe, to chapter 1 and 2, and how can you tell? Well, when you're dividing, you can't divide by any number. So this down here cannot be 0. So what value of x makes that 0? So if we set this up as an equation, we find out that if x is 1, that will make the denominator 0, which means x cannot equal 1. So that's the number. What number is not part of the domain? X equals 1 is not part of the domain. And then how can we tell? Because the denominator cannot equal 0. So, because the denominator cannot equal 0, because we can't divide by 0. And then on the last question, number 30, if f of x is equal to 3x minus 9 and g of x is equal to negative x squared, find each of these. So pay attention to which function you're supposed to be plugging it into. So for a, you're plugging it into the first function, f of x. So we're looking for f of negative 2. So you would say 3 times negative 2 minus 9, which is equal to negative 6 minus 9, and that is negative 15. Remember what that means. When x is negative 2, y is negative 15. So you have an input and an output there. On b, now you're looking at the g function. So this will be g of negative 2 is equal to negative. Now that negative is not being squared, so it's negative, and then you plug in the negative 2 and square it. So that means that this is still on the outside. Negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4. So then your answer is negative 4. So when you plug in negative 2, you get an output of negative 4. All right, C, x if f of x is equal to 0. So now it's actually saying if f of x, which is that y value, is equal to 0, find x. So we would say if f of x is 0, that would be 0 equals 3x minus 9. We can add 9 to both sides, divide by 3, and x would equal 3. So that one's actually asking for the input. It's giving you the output. And then the last question on D says g of m. So g of m, just like you do with numbers, you would plug in typically a number here, but this is asking for m, so you replace all your x values in the function g. All right, in this case, that would just be that x squared. So now it's negative, and you're going to replace it with m. G is the function, so you replace it with m, and that would be negative m squared. And remember that what you're squaring is just the m, not the negative.